Welcome everyone to Starting Point's Education Channel podcast. We're lucky enough today to have Erik Jervis with us, who is going to talk about returning to socialization. But before we go there, we'll probably talk about how you've all been socializing during this pandemic. My name is Loretta Depka, and I am the Executive Director at Starting Point. Erik has been a counselor at the Starting Point for how many years, Erik?
About 5 now.
Okay. So he initially served as an intern, but he is now both teaching and has his private practice at the Starting Point. Erik works with children, adolescents, and adults who are seeking help for multiple issues: self-esteem, anxiety, sexuality, recovery from trauma, codependency, and relationship issues. The thing I like the most about his approach is that his therapeutic approach caters to a client's needs. He is committed to providing a safe and supportive environment for his clients, and that's why we like having him here at Starting Point. So Erik, did I miss anything in my introduction of you that you'd like to add?
No, you basically got everything
Okay.
that covers me as a practitioner.
Well, why don't we jump right in there? Tell me
Sure.
what socialization is.
So basically, socialization is just the process of how we develop identity and learn social aspects of society. We learn social norms, we learn behaviors, laws, morals, what we deem as appropriate or deviant. Through socialization, starting from childhood, growing up, we develop an understanding of how society works and really how to be a productive member of society.
So socialization in that description changes as we age.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. So how have we been socializing during the pandemic? Have we been?
I think for some people, they have chosen to socialize safely using precautions. A big one that I was very happy to see people doing were outdoor gatherings, like whether it be, bonfires or small get-togethers in the backyard. I know people that have like met in like parking lots and like sat in like the trunks of their car or the beds of their trucks and spoke with one another. So I think for some people they were able to. I think the issue really comes in for like the urban areas or inner cities where everything is so close in proximity. It's harder to do that. So I do think we did a decent job, depending on where you live.
Erik, we're in the southern New Jersey area, and what I noticed on our main street outside our door, Haddon Avenue, many people did not wear the mask on when they were walking. But if you go to Philadelphia, everyone has their mask on when they're out and walking. I think that really speaks to what you're talking about with the difference between city and sort of suburbs.
Absolutely. I had to drive through Philly a couple times. And as I did, I couldn't help but notice everyone wearing a mask, even outside. And I thought, well, yeah, it makes sense because, you have more people walking in proximity, in closer proximity to one another, as opposed to in southern New Jersey, where you can be pretty far apart, you can be distant from one another.
Erik, how difficult has it been for young people with the lack of socialization? I mean, I'm sure you see clients that are really struggling with that.
So I think my biggest concern and one of the biggest issues I handled with clients in particular between like 16 to 22, that sophomore year of high school to that senior year of college. Very difficult for that age group in particular, especially seniors in high school transitioning to freshman year. Because think about it, last year at this time, the pandemic starts. Schools are deciding to go remote, but prom is still on the table, graduation is still on the table, Florida trips or senior trips are still on the table. And then the closer we get to the end of the year, closer to June, prom's canceled, senior
Right.
trips canceled. And for many graduating students last year, graduation was we're gonna give you a time frame and you're gonna line up in your car, drive through the parking lot, and then the principal is gonna hand you your diploma and then you can drive away. That was a lot of students' graduation. It was informal. They didn't get to celebrate with their classmates and the peers. And for many of them who planned on leaving the state to go to college or university, and they lost a lot of that. Transition into freshman year of college, many of them couldn't go to dorms because a lot of colleges and universities are doing online, or if they were allowed on campus to live in dorms, a lot of the colleges did the precautions to the point where you couldn't really have big gatherings, you couldn't mingle, you have to take CDC guideline precautions. All these things make sense. However, it takes away from that population socialization aspects, important things. In that time frame, what we're looking at psychologically is going from self-identity, the beginning of that, high school years of cognitive development are, who am I? Going to college starts to solidify who I am. That's why when we go to high school to college, our friend group gets bigger, but by the end of college, it's shrunk because we know who we are, we know who we want to surround us, and we know that they're an extension of us. But we only learn that through socialization. We only learn those things through talking to people, learning ideologies from other people, learning spirituality from other people, whether we agree with it or not. But that's how we create self-identity.
I don't want to take you off the topic too much, but as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about all the news that we were getting through this year. We were inundated with all bad news, basically. I don't remember any real good news reports that were coming on. How does that also, I mean, if we're creating self, isn't that scary?
Absolutely. Look at, the pandemic news alone, between what the CDC knows, what they don't know, what, we're talking about, what the UK and other countries are finding. We're now finding out that the CDC is changing guidelines, so it's seemingly, and it's because it's science, it's going to change rapidly as we progress. The thing is, though, a lot of the media that we had, if not 90% of it, was all negative.
Right.
You have people not seeing elderly relatives, grandparents, aunts and uncles, because they're at higher risk. People with medical conditions, chronic conditions, they're more at higher risk. So now it's like, well, I don't want to go around anybody because I'm afraid. What if I don't know I have it and I give it to them? And even beyond that, societal mainframe things that we've been talking about. Let's look at the Black Lives Matter movement that we saw progress over the summer, and people protesting, and this societal fight between what they believed as the oppressed versus the oppressor, and societal issues stemming from hundreds of years. Now that's on top of the pandemic.
Right.
Right. And then it's more bad news or more negative news on top of it. And you're stuck in your home. You're confined to the same walls. If you live alone, it's much worse because now you're basically living in solitary confinement. So you're kind of stuck listening to the same regurgitated information over and over and over. You're not really learning anything unless you pushed yourself to learn, to, start. I know a lot of people that just started reading and reading random things, reading metaphysics or reading philosophy, reading things that are going to make them think because they don't have people to do that with anymore.
Right. So, Erik, okay, so now we're coming hopefully out of the restrictions. It's still taking, so now it's the anticipation of, oh, I'm going to be able to socialize. I've had my vaccine. I can't wait to go see my grandmother. I can't wait for, couples to get together for dinner. I can't wait to start dating. I mean, these are 1,000 things that everything was put on hold. I'm noticing the temperature, it seems like, is going higher, that people are more testy and agitated than even when they were locked down. So tell me what's going on there.
What I think it is this aspect of when it gets cold and it gets darker earlier, when we see that seasonal affect, depression kick in for a lot of people, they're not willing to go out. They don't want to be around people. It's 5 o'clock, it's already getting dark, it's cold. I don't want to bother going out. I can deal with it. In the summertime or in the spring going into the summertime, as it heats up, you know, the sun's going down around what, 8 o'clock, 7, 8 o'clock. It's nice out, it's warm. Maybe we go hang out for a little bit, we can go spend time somewhere. I think people are more likely to test the waters in the warmer weather and in the summertime, just because you can congregate much easier outside. And bringing up like dating, for instance, a lot of single people, uh, I really do foresee, like on dating profiles, I've been vaxxed
Oh,
as
wow.
as like a check mark, because
Mm-hmm.
I think in some capacity, subconsciously, people are going to want to know, were you vaccinated? Or you got your first one, but are you going to get your second one, kind of thing? And I think that's going to be a new box to check off on dating apps, which is going to be interesting to see. Uh, I also kind of foresee it being like a new pickup line at a bar, or at a club, or at a with somebody, like well, what vax did you get? Oh, Moderna. I got Pfizer.
I like that, Eric. Oh, that's great. Um, how can people sort of mentally prepare themselves for that kind of conversation? I mean, you really have to start having these conversations if you're going to socialize, right?
Absolutely. I believe it's really part of the boundary conversation. We all have boundaries with people. We kind of put them up when we meet people, when we get introduced to new people. I think the conversation of vaccinated, not vaccinated, uh, tested, untested, whatever the case may be, should become part of the repertoire, because socialization has to happen. It's going to happen whether we want it to or not. And as society changes, so does the face of socialization. There's not a conversation I don't have with students, with clients, with personal friends and family, to where the vaccine or someone getting tested doesn't come up at least once.
That's really true.
And I think that's where we are in the mainstream of society right now. I believe that that's just what it's going to be from now on. And, you know, like anything else in society, people are either going to go along with it or they're not. The way society is moving, I think people want to get out more. And I think they want to be able to see people and not have to worry, or not have to worry as much.
And what about people who have anxiety about going out even before the pandemic? This
Sure.
must be an incredibly difficult time for them.
The not the pandemic, so to speak, but the quarantines, like the state shutdowns. Uh, it was a social anxiety person's dream, an introvert's dream. I don't have to talk to anyone. I don't have to go to the office. I don't have to go in public anymore, because that anxiety is much worse with people around. But now you're going to see people who have been cooped up for over a year probably have some of that new anxiety that kicks in. Being overly cautious, wanting to wear a hazmat suit even if they've been vaccinated in public. And I think one thing to kind of keep in mind is it's following what you believe. If you're too afraid, there's too anxiety ridden, you're too worried, then you're not ready to do it, right? Exposure to a certain degree works, not if it's making you that uncomfortable. So I think it's like starting small, right? I think going from like Zoom meetings to like outdoor gatherings with a few people is a good way to start. And just getting used to being around people. You can remain distant, you can wear a mask if you want. But the more we're cooped up in a home, that anxiety is just going to get worse because anxiety preys off fear. The more we fear something, the more anxiety spikes. The more anxiety spikes, the more physiological issues we get, the more physical things happen to us. Heart rate increases, cholesterol can spike, headaches can happen. Why? Because we've allowed ourselves to be overconsumed by the anxiety. So it's like anything else. It's starting small and slowly progressing more and more and more until the day, whenever that day is, you're comfortable being around people.
I had a conversation with a couple young people that are in high school and they've opted for the virtual.
Sure.
With no intention of ever changing that. So are there going to be more individuals that are homeschooling? And again, socialization is not there.
I think with this topic, I think it's tricky because a lot of those students were the same students I would work with while they're in traditional schooling, and they're coming to me for social anxiety issues. They're coming to me because they can't concentrate or they can't work to the best of their ability because their anxiety has them focused on everything else. I did point this out before in a conversation with someone that a lot of these kids that are online, a lot of them have socialization aspects, but it's modified. It's not traditional, which is where I think, we're going to see sociology and psychology kind of research in that direction. This aspect of online communities, online platforms that allow in real time these teenagers, these youth from the comfort of their homes to speak with. Because they may not be able to have a conversation with you face to face in person, but they may be able to with a webcam and a microphone. Some people, it's literally being around people makes them anxious. Others, it's what you're going to say back. So it really depends on them. But because it is still a form of socialization, they still are going to have to at some point, because that's life, they're going to have to be in the world in some capacity. So those kids, again, make them comfortable and slowly graduate to, well, can you hang out with a few people in person? And try to kind of give them the best of both worlds, what they're comfortable with and what's going to help with development.
What about seniors? They've been scared inside.
Yeah.
They've really been restricted. They miss hugging their grandchildren.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them are beginning because they are vaccinated. But also, a lot of them live alone. A lot of them didn't embrace technology. How do we get them out and about and social again?
I think it's going to be easier for them.
Really?
I think it will be easier for seniors because that's a generation that wasn't around for the development of a lot of modern technology. My generation thrived because my generation were children when all of these technological advances were happening, and we grew up with it. Seniors and children in like Gen Z they're gonna struggle with certain things, but I think when it comes to re-socializing into society, I think seniors are gonna have an easier time just because they're the generation of talking. They're the generation of, being in person, not worrying about your phone, not even caring about the phone. You left it at home. They don't even realize it. They're the generation that they can keep a conversation going, and they know how to do that. My generation is decent at it. Gen Z, I see issues with vocalization and having conversations. The younger you get generationally, there are issues. Younger generations, Gen Z, and I teach that generation. Not the greatest with public speaking, not the greatest with carrying a conversation.
Really? I'm
Oh,
finding
yeah.
this fascinating
Yes.
because they've socialized with a computer as opposed to people.
I think it's because they've had modern technology for so long that they see the technology as their form of socialization. Whereas, you know, I grew up with dial-up internet. So at any given point in time, I could get kicked off of AOL, and then I'd have to go on like use my room phone to talk to my friends because texting wasn't a thing. So I mean, it's that. So my generation had the technology, but we still had to know how to have a conversation and keep a conversation going. The next generation had all the technology. So if we can't talk on the computer, we can text. If we can't text, we can video chat. We can't video chat. Well, I guess worst case scenario, we can talk on the phone.
I just find that humorous that talking on the phone is the last choice.
I've noticed that when I give assignments in the classroom, my students range from like 17 to mid 20s. Uh, the older students that are like in their mid to late 20s, they're fine. They take lead. The younger students, you can see like they're always like, well, who's going to take it? Who's going to be the one who takes lead? And the rest of them are like on their phone. And when I give them an assignment where they have to use their phone, it's dead silent, but they're all doing the work. But if I give them an assignment where they have to talk, a lot of them don't know how to. They don't
Wow.
know how to communicate. And I think a lot of that is hindered because some of them have depended on technology for so long. I'm not against technology, trust me. I have 3 gaming consoles, a gaming laptop, a microphone, and a webcam. I have an iPhone. I'm not against technology. I think we have to get back to teaching this is the socialization part, talking, communicating, right? Like I said in the beginning with like the opening of what is sociology, learning beliefs, learning social construct, learning, how to speak to one another, communicating, verbalization, being able to do all that. You'd be surprised at how many young people don't know how to communicate their feelings. They don't know what they feel.
So, we've talked about this in other podcasts that, the next addiction is going to be technology addiction. But what I'm hearing is we're already seeing the results of not the addiction of just so much technology.
Mhm. When you look at technology, right? If technology is used appropriately, a child can thrive. Technology pushes cognitive development. And it's interesting because that's how that's how a 3 or 4-year-old can get into your phone no problem, or can download an app no problem.
I know, it drives me crazy.
It pushes their cognitive development to that point where they're doing things above their years.
Right.
Downside, because it's so individual and one-on-one virtually, it tends to hinder wanting to communicate, wanting to talk, wanting to be a part of a team. Well, only if that team is in person. If it's online, a lot of them will do it.
So then this school year, let's
Mhm.
just look at this school year. Let's say everyone's going back in September to live classes. How is that going to work? Are they going to be able to adjust and socialize? And I know we're not going back to the same normal. I'm not suggesting that we are, but it just makes me wonder how everyone moves forward from this point.
I think it's going to be a trial and error thing, and I think A, Uh, Teachers need to be prepared by either the school counselors or the school social workers or the district. Uh, I think they need to be prepared to work with students because a lot of students are going to be uncomfortable. A lot of them are going to be socially awkward. A lot of them are going because they're so used to being at home and learning and doing their assignments. I mean, look at the comment I said to you last night. I couldn't wait to get home to put on basketball shorts because
Right,
for the majority of the year, I worked in sweatpants, basketball shorts, but you can't see that because you only see me from here up,
right.
right? You have students that never have to show their face on their webcam. They can just leave it blank and just show their name. Going in person, I think there's going to strike some anxiety, some social awkwardness, but I think they'll do fine as they get used to it again.
Because children and teens are resilient, correct?
Oh, very much so.
And how about seniors and sort of that middle age? Are they going to be resilient enough to return back to work?
I think the work thing is going to be interesting because I think what this pandemic has shown for a lot of jobs, you don't have to be in an office to do them. Yeah, I don't, and I think that's going to be a new push in our society. I think it's going to be people pushing that, why do I have to work from home if for the past year and a half I did fine working at home? Why do I have to go to an office and do the same job? If I shown that I was responsible and accountable and most likely did more work, because statistically, when you do work from home, you typically do work longer hours and you typically do more work, then why do I have to drive to an office then? I think they're going to be resilient in going back in public. I think a lot of adults that are working age are going to be looking at, well, why can't I have a telecommuting job and work from home?
Do you believe things were lost by, I know this is a little off topic, but
Hmm.
if everybody's working from home, there is no gossip around the water cooler. The office politics are different. Um, and I think we find the people we work with know more about us day to day than our families and friends.
Yeah.
So we're missing all of that. Um, unless you're getting it on Zoom, and having spent a lot of time on Zoom, I'm not getting it.
It's
So,
interesting. Yeah. What I think will be lost is that interpersonal piece, that
right.
piece of like interacting in live time, face to face. Um, I was skeptical at first with telehealth um, because I think a big part of my profession is reading body language and getting uninterrupted reactions from people. And there have been plenty of sessions where bad connection on their end, I lost audio, they were a lot of clients are distracted because they're, I'm on the phone, I'm not in person, so maybe I'm doing the dishes, I'm getting dinner ready, I'm taking care of my kid or whatever the case may be. And in some cases they're not fully there. And then in some cases I can't see their reactions. Maybe the room's too dark, or maybe they're not comfortable turning the camera on and be seeing their home. So now I can't even see what they're doing or how they're reacting. I think that gets lost. When it comes to colleagues and coworkers, yeah, because your job is almost like your second family in certain cases, unless you don't like your job and your coworkers. And I think that is a vital part. In sociology, we consider the function of society like an organism.
Okay.
Everybody has to do their role. Everyone has to do their job in order for society to progress and move forward. If we look at if we look at people, in order to do that, people have to socialize to a certain extent. Not socializing or the refusal to socialize is a dysfunction. It's actually interrupting progression. It's interfering in us moving forward. So to some degree, yeah, like I agree, certain jobs can be telecommuted, but to some capacity, we still need human interaction. There are far too many studies showing us what happens when we don't have human interaction. It's a loss of identity. It becomes a loss of understanding. It becomes a loss of knowing what's going on around you. Those are all vital for our self-development.
So what would be the advice that you would give us as we enter a whole new world, because we don't know what it's going to look like. It's probably going to be a mix of lots of things. So how do I go out and meet people my age, whatever that age may be, and expand my friend base and see my family? How do we encourage people to do it if they're happy behind a screen?
I think the ones that are happy behind a screen will either be in one of like two columns. Either they'll remain behind the screen or they'll see everyone else doing it, so they'll feel like they're missing out, kind of like the FOMO thing. Uh, and they'll want to finally reintegrate. I do think, though, for the mass population, they will want to just be around people. I think far more people in society will push to congregate again and be in their inner circles again in public. You know, we want to be more than 6 feet apart. We want to be closer than 6 feet apart. I want to be, I have enjoyed the aspect of, people being cautious more, because to me, that's them being mindful. And if you've if you've been taught by me, if I've ever been your therapist, if I've ever done a lecture that you've listened to, I'm all about being in the here and now. And people being cautious during this pandemic has kind of like forced them to be mindful. And I would like to see that continue, and I hope that continues, at least that thought process of being here and being uh, in the here and now and just staying present with everything.
And 5 years from now, will our development, our socialization development catch up? Can we catch up, or is it lost from this past year?
As society changes, so must the human condition. So I believe 5 years, 10 years from now, socialization will be different. I think it'll modify itself. I think it's just something that'll naturally happen, because one way or another, people will continue to talk to one another. Socialization of this lifetime may be different than socialization in 15 years, 20 years. And that's okay. We have to be willing to be okay to this process changing. Certain things are very concrete. You take any theoretical textbook for, Piaget, Erikson, Freud, that stuff is the foundation of everything, right? Durkheim, Karl Marx, Weber, the foundation of what we understand. But everything else has to modify. Why? Well, we're not in the 1800s anymore. We're not in the early 1900s anymore. Our socialization now is far different then. I mean, come on, we're doing this through Zoom. 100 years ago, this wouldn't be happening.
Right.
100 years ago, we'd be writing each other, and then you'd be writing up an op-ed, and then hopefully people would buy it in the newspaper.
What's a newspaper?
Overpriced paper.
There you go.
But, just like everything else, I think socialization will just modify and we'll understand it better as we get out of a post-pandemic society, whenever that will be fully. I'm excited to see what happens. I'm excited to see how people interact. As of right now, I'll be back in the classroom in the fall. And I'm excited to see how students will react in the classroom with me. I'm just excited that I get to be in a classroom finally, again. And I'll get firsthand look of how they interact with each other, if there's actually any changes in the year and a half that I haven't been in the classroom.
And how about counseling face to face? You do some of that now still, right?
Right now, I'm face to face 2 days a week.
Okay.
I typically like scatter my clients, so they're not run on top of each other. Um, and you know, I'm comfortable with it if they're comfortable with it. Many of my clients are comfortable. Many of my clients want me to do more face-to-face sessions, because I really do think for some people being face-to-face in therapy is imperative. Uh, I think it's, for some people who can do Zoom, they're fine with it, or phone calls, whatever. I think they'll be fine. I think a certain population need to be in front of their therapist. They need to be in that room. They need to be in that safe space that comforts them. And, my clients, their stuff is in my room, between my salt lamp, my Buddha statue, my serenity prayer on the wall, and all of that comforts them when they're talking about difficult subjects. And I do believe they need to be in a room with their practitioner.
Well, we're anxious to have everybody back, that's for sure. And we are already seeing a number of clients face to face. So we're really hopeful. Even our groups have started to come back. Of course, they're socially distanced, they're masked, and they're hybrids. They're doing, some of them are on screen. I don't know if you've caught any of them doing that, but it's wild to see 4 people in their lives, socially distanced, masked, and then 20 people on the TV. It's really rather great. So, well, Erik, did we miss anything that you wanted to talk about?
In terms of socialization, I think
Miss Sarah, Stephanie said it like kind of down over.
I think the big takeaway is whatever you're comfortable with, all in all. I do think that socialization is bound to change. And like I said earlier, with the technology advancements for certain people. But I think, it's such a vital thing for us. We have to get back out there. We have to start interacting with people again. And more importantly, we have to get back to pushing society to reintegrate into itself. We're not designed to be confounded to one house, one apartment, one space. We're designed to interact with other people. We grow when we understand others' belief systems, morals, values, who they are, their identities, their culture, their race, their religion, their spirituality. And that only happens in a lot of cases if we socialize. And we can be on a Zoom call, and I could right now just turn my camera off, I can turn my mic off, and I can just sit here. But I don't learn anything because I'm not interacting. And I think that's the key to socialization, that interaction piece. And I think for a lot of people, it has to be in person.
Well, thank you, Erik, so much. And thank all of you for joining us. This will be on our YouTube channel in about 24 hours. So please you can get there from visiting Starting Point's website. And thank you, Erik. And thank all of you who have joined us.
Thank you for inviting me.